Good morning, dear candidate. Good morning, members of the candidate's family, friends and colleagues. I have the honor to hereby open this academic ceremony in which Mrs. Luisa Minssen, promovenda for the time being, will defend the academic thesis, Understanding Recruitment Choices, the Role of Applicant and Recruiter Characteristics. May I invite to present a summary of your study and the conclusions of your thesis. The floor is yours, Luisa.
Thank you. Highly esteemed Pro-Rector and Corona, dear friends, family and colleagues, welcome. Thank you all for coming. I stand here to defend my thesis, Understanding Recruitment Choices, the Role of Applicant and Recruiter Characteristics. But before we engage in the discussion, I want to take you on a brief journey through the studies I conducted during my PhD. The transition from school to work is crucial for young people's future employment. Vocational education training, in short, VET systems, help prepare them by providing both theoretical and practical skills. Countries with strong VET systems, like Germany, which is the country I will focus on in the following, offer smooth school-to-work transitions, stable career path. These systems equip workers with in-demand skills through high-quality training and recognized qualifications. The dual VET system in Germany, which combines school-based learning with on-the-job training in firms, leads to certifications that align with job market needs and improve employment prospects. Moreover, this model is not only relevant for Germany, but also for other countries, such as the Netherlands, where improving school-to-work transitions is a key concern for enhancing youth employment outcomes. Today, work conditions are changing rapidly because technological and demographic shifts creating a mismatch between the supply of apprentices and the demand from firms. On the supply side, many apprentices struggle to find positions because firms hesitate to invest in training or have preferences for certain candidates. On the demand side, firms can't find suitable applicants as industries and requirements on workers evolve quickly. This gap leaves young people unprepared and at risk of unemployment, while firms face productivity losses. In countries like Germany, where apprenticeships are key for career success, unequal access makes this worse. My dissertation focuses on the supply side, the firm perspective, to explore what firms look for in applicants and the factors affecting recruitment decisions. I aim to contribute to better matching the supply of apprentices and the demand from firms, helping to bridge this gap and create a more sustainable workforce. More precisely, I focus on three key elements on three different levels that impact, among others, recruitment decisions: institutional support, firms' work context, and recruiters' preferences. These factors play a role in determining how applicants, whether apprenticeship applicants or already mid-qualified workers, are evaluated and recruited. First, institutional support, such as government incentives, can shape recruitment practices at a broader level. Secondly, firms' work context, including, for example, production strategies or organizational needs, can impact the types of skills they prioritize. And lastly, recruiters' preferences are crucial, as individual recruiters often have their own biases and priorities when assessing applicants. By examining these three mechanisms, I aim to understand the complex relationship between applicants' attributes and their recruitment probabilities, and shedding light on the mismatch between supply and demand from various angles. To explore how firms make recruitment decisions, I used vignette experiments. In these experiments, fictional applicants are presented to real recruiters who are forced to make a decision in a controlled setting. This means that the applicants are described based on traits such as personality, skills, or socio-demographics. I conducted two types of experiments. The first is a discrete choice experiment, where recruiters choose their preferred applicant from two options. And the second is a factorial survey experiment, where recruiters rank applicants by their likelihood of being recruited from lowest to highest. These experiments help me understand how certain factors impact recruitment choices, identifying the attributes that firms value most and show how firms and recruiter characteristics affect decision-making. These vignette experiments were embedded in different key data sets, each providing valuable insights into firm and recruiter characteristics. These data sets were provided by the Federal Institute of Vocational Education and Training, short BIP. First, the cost-benefit survey from 2017 and 18 focused on apprenticeship and continuing training and recruitment. This data set helped to analyze how firms weigh the costs and benefits of recruiting apprentices. Second, the qualification panel from 2021 provided detailed firm-level information on qualification measures and the evolving demand for skills in the labor market. Lastly, in my third paper, I merged the qualification panel with the VET statistics, which gather annual data on apprenticeship trainees, contract details, and examination results. This combined data set helps track trends in vocational training and recruitment across firms. Coming to my first paper, which starts at the institutional level, applicants who count as low-skilled in terms of school grades or communication skills face challenges in getting apprenticeship positions, largely because firms concern about higher training costs. Active labor market policies, in short ALMPs, like financial or training support, are designed to reduce these risks and encourage firms to recruit low-skilled applicants. However, the general impact of ALMPs has been moderate, with many applicants still struggling to find a position. In my thesis, I first disentangle the impact of general ALMPs by differentiating between two types, financial support and external training support, to see which instrument is attractive to firms. Additionally, I explore whether risk-tolerant recruiters who are generally more open to accepting higher initial costs for long-term benefits compared to risk-averse recruiters who are the first to embrace the opportunity when the risks are mitigated by ALMPs. Hereby, I aim to identify factors that can make these policies more effective. First, I found that offering financial support to firms increased the recruitment probability. However, in contrast, training support had no impact. This might be because financial support reduces risk in a more tangible way, while the benefits of training support are less clear to firms. Third, while there was some indication that risk-tolerant recruiters might be more open to ALMPs than risk-averse recruiters, the evidence was not robust. Previous studies suggest that risk tolerance increases investment in training, but mainly for already employed workers. Apprentices, on the other hand, are often young and unproven, requiring more extensive training, which possess a higher risk for firms. Even then, financial or training support is available. Risk-tolerant recruiters may still hesitate because of the required long-term commitment. In summary, the effectiveness of ALMPs depends on their design, as financial support showing clear benefits for firms. Coming to my second paper, in which I shift the focus from the institutional to the firm level. More precisely, I investigate which personality traits product innovating firms prefer when recruiting mid-qualified workers. Product innovation is the most common form of innovation in Germany, and unlike studies that focus on differences in generating innovation, I examine the adoption of product innovation, with mid-qualified workers often being the ones putting innovation into practice. The work environment in these firms often requires workers to quickly adapt to change, and a worker's ability to adapt is shaped by their personality traits. Therefore, I investigated whether recruiters from product innovating firms prefer certain personality traits. And hereby I considered the big 5 personality traits and investigated how traits like openness to change, conscientiousness, or emotional stability impact recruitment decisions. I distinguish between incremental and radical product innovation. Radical innovation involves big changes like the first Apple mouse, while incremental innovation focuses on small improvements like updates to a car model, for example. Given these differences, the demands on workers differ. I found that emotionally stable workers are preferred by both types of firms, but firms involved in radical innovation also valued conscientiousness. So emotional stability helps workers cope with change generally, while conscientiousness is important for detail-oriented tasks and putting in extra effort, which is especially crucial in radical innovation, where changes require greater involvement. Other personality traits didn't affect the selection. These findings show that personality is key in recruitment, excluding applicants with different traits, and so potentially leading to labor market inequalities. Moreover, it highlights the importance of considering firm-specific needs when studying recruitment trends. In my third paper, I focus on the individual level, exploring how recruiter characteristics such as age, gender, and job position impact gender discrimination. In the recruitment of apprentices for gender-segregated jobs, such as construction workers or nurses, gender segregation in the labor market leads to poorer matching between firms and workers, especially for women, who often face lower pay and fewer career opportunities in female-dominated fields compared to male-dominated fields. Research shows that recruiters tend to prefer applicants who share characteristics like their own, which contributes to discrimination. However, the impact of recruiter characteristics on apprentice recruitment, and so focusing on the early stages of an occupational career, has been understudied, and so I wanted to explore how these characteristics may impact gender segregation right from the start of an apprentice's career. Coming to my findings, I found that on average, applicants of a gender opposed to the dominant gender of an occupation are less likely recruited and therefore are disadvantaged in the apprenticeship market. However, the gender of the recruiter didn't seem to affect their choices, possibly because the applicants were young and just starting their careers. Recruiters might expect no gender differences in qualification. However, older recruiters were less likely to recruit applicants of the opposite gender compared to younger recruiters, who were more likely to recruit gender neutrally. Similarly, firm owners were less inclined to recruit gender neutrally compared to non-firm owners, while HR professionals tended to make more gender neutral recruitment decisions than non-HR professionals. Hereby I show that gender conformity in the recruitment decisions still plays a role, and that certain recruiter characteristics further intensifying gender-based recruitment gaps. But on a positive note, the findings suggest that younger recruiters and HR professionals are more likely to adopt inclusive practices, likely because of increased awareness or diversity training. To conclude, the findings of this dissertation highlight the interconnectivity of three key factors influencing recruitment outcomes. First, institutional support, such as financial incentives, can improve the recruitment chances for apprenticeship applicants. However, its effectiveness depends on careful design and firm engagement. Secondly, the firm work context, particularly in product innovating industries, reveals that recruiter preferences for specific personality traits can further contribute to labor market inequalities. And finally, recruiter preferences are crucial in determining whether VET applicants get access to the apprenticeship market and ultimately can successfully transition into the labor market. So together, these factors emphasize the importance of aligning institutional policies, firm-specific needs, and recruiter preferences to bridge the mismatch and improve labor market outcomes for young people. The findings of this dissertation offer key implications for firms, applicants, and policymakers. For policymakers, these insights highlight the importance of designing education and training programs that better match labor market demands. Well-designed policies such as targeted LMPs and gender equality training can reduce mismatches and improve employment outcomes for all stakeholders. For firms, understanding recruitment preferences helps refine recruitment practices such as promoting gender equality in recruitment to fully access the talent pool. And finally, for applicants, aligning their skills and personality traits with firms' needs, such as those prioritized by product innovating firms, can significantly improve their job opportunities. Thank you very much. I look forward to hearing your comments and questions. And now I give back the floor to the pro-rector.
Thank you very much Frau Luisa Minssen for your presentation, which we thoroughly enjoyed. We have, of course, a nice opposition organized for you. They're all in line to ask you questions and engage you in a vibrant and dynamic conversation, I hope. The opposition is typically opened by the chair of the assessment committee, in this case Professor Dr. Andries de Grip, Research Center Education and the Labour Market ROA here of Maastricht University. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Pro-Rector. Dear candidate, dear Luisa, let me first congratulate you with your thesis. I think it includes 3 very interesting empirical papers from quite a complete framework of the drivers of the demand for apprentices. 2 of the papers have been published already in good journals, so congratulations for this. The question I want to ask you is on Chapter 2. Chapter 2 is on where you investigate in a factorial survey experiment whether this financial and training support increases the recruitment probability of the low-skilled applicants. My question is particularly on your hypothesis 3. And in this hypothesis 3, it's mentioned that you expect that when firms are offered financial or training support, particularly the risk-tolerant recruiters are more likely to recruit low-skilled apprentices than the risk-averse recruiters. My question is on whether what is exactly the logic of this expectation. And on this I have 2 sub-questions. So first is, what kind of risk does this support reduce when recruiting a low-skilled applicant? And when I think about this, my thought is that it might particularly affect the success of completing the apprenticeship. So is that something, or do you have other thoughts on this? So what kind of risk does it reduce? And second, why would this support particularly increase the recruitment probabilities for risk-tolerant recruiters? If they lower investment risk, you might also think that it might be more beneficial for the risk-averse recruiters. So what's exactly the mechanism there? And this combination of questions, maybe, I hope you can elaborate on this, and I'm looking forward to your reply to these questions.
Highly esteemed opponent, thank you very much for your compliments and the question. So first of all, the risk involved with recruiting a low-skilled applicant is definitely the risk of not completing the apprenticeship. So first of all, you have financially, it might be more costly because it might involve more training, more people needed to actually sit aside next to the apprentices and train it. So that is more costly than for another, depending on what type of skill it needs to count as low-skilled apprentices. For example, being not interested in the job, that would be not so good, because then they also need to motivate the person to actually stay on track. And then, of course, also the financial component, that you invest more money and potentially not have a return on investment by either not completing the apprenticeship or not staying at the company afterwards. And the second question on the risk tolerance and risk-averse recruiters, in my opinion, risk-averse recruiters are maybe more cautious to employ someone who also gets ALMPs, for example, because ALMPs might be a signal that that there is an issue and that it might take more time or money to complete the apprenticeship with this person. And then the risk-tolerant recruiters are among the group of recruiters the first who say, okay, this is a risk, but we get something to support us, and we are the ones who do the first step towards the apprentices to train this person.
Yeah, I understand your reasoning. I think it's valid, but I think there might also be another reason for it. It might be that it's more related to the risks, more related to investment costs than to risks. For instance, lowering risk, as you said it might particularly work for this training. In terms of training makes them more competent, and the risk that they can't complete will be lower. But investment costs, but you don't find this effect. But you find an effect on the investment costs. So particularly by this financial support. So wouldn't it there be possible that it's much more the lower investment costs change the cost-benefit ratio, and that's more the reason than having a lower risk? What are your thoughts on this second explanation?
Potentially, yes. It could be that lowering the overall investment cost would increase engagement in apprenticeship training. However, in this case, I think that the financial support is simply also more tangible for the firms. So they see a clear benefit for them to actually take this apprenticeship on and train this person. And for example, with training support, which might be also very beneficial, but potentially firms are either not aware that this support is actually in place, or they don't see a benefit in it. So it might also be the design of this specific policy.
Yeah. And your assumption is that the negative mode of this support is that they are more aware that these lower skilled workers are low skilled.
Yes.
Yeah. I can imagine that they anyway aware of them. But
yes.
You think this makes it more clear?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll continue the opposition by giving the floor to Dr. Annemarie Koen-Nelen, also member of the Assessment Committee. And Annemarie is Associate Professor of Lifelong Development at ROA, Maastricht University. Annemarie.
Thank you, dear Pro-Rector. Dear Luisa, first of all, I would also like to congratulate you with your thesis. You have written a very nice thesis where you have 3 papers around a very highly relevant topic, and you even published two of those chapters, so that's very nice. I would like to ask a question which is loosely related to chapter 4, in which you address the topic of gender inequalities. And you analyze the probabilities that someone gets recruited depending on the dominant gender in the target occupation. And you find that especially elderly recruiters and people with a non-HR position seem to disfavor women in male-dominated occupations. And given the high labor market shortages in, for example, the technical sector, this is not good news, and that's also what you conclude yourself. So now that your research has shown that this is a weak spot in recruitment, I would like to ask you what could be done to increase the gender equality in these occupations. You mention in your conclusion chapter, for example, a training for recruiters. Could you be more specific about either this or another intervention, related of course to VET recruitment, to reduce gender equality in occupations? And how would you causally evaluate this intervention? I'm curious to hear your thoughts about this.
Esteemed opponent, thank you very much for your comments and your questions. Indeed, this is not good news that persons who are not of the dominant gender of an occupation are discriminated. And indeed, in my study, I see that especially elderly and non-HR professionals and firm owners actually even more intensify this discrimination. But what I also see is that people in HR, so those who are formally trained for that, are able to minimize this risk or this kind of discrimination. So for one, I would suggest to, for one, keep on going with the diversity trainings, so that, for example, that in bigger companies and concerns, the HR people are more, the recruitment process is more formal. So there's less room for personal biases. So that is definitely a way to go further to minimize discrimination, and potentially also to offer, for example, diversity trainings also for smaller and mid-sized companies, where firm owners are more the ones who are doing the recruitment decision. So that, for example, also offering them HR diversity trainings, so that they are also more aware of the fact and more sensitive towards it. Yeah.
Yes, I can imagine that this might work, but how would you go about if you also want to causally evaluate whether it indeed works, also for these small and medium-sized enterprises?
For one, I still, or in general, I think that this kind of topic needs ongoing research. So you always need to evaluate whether certain trainings or policies are actually in place and working and are targeting the right people. So evaluation and, for example, vignette studies or field experimental observations are definitely needed on an ongoing basis.
May I ask you to, for example, give an idea about how you could use a field experiment to analyze this? So how could you set up such a training for small and medium-sized enterprises to evaluate whether such an HR training or a diversity training would really work? Because if we would just ask some people, some firms to take part in the training and others not, then I don't think we can really say something about the causal effect.
Mm. I mean, my study is not exactly on field experiments, so I'm not the expert in that field. However, I mean, in terms of policies, you can also incentivize firms to actually participate in this kind of trainings, and so that they see a clear benefit towards implementing anti-discrimination processes, and to formalize the HR process, and maybe I think from the firm side, you always need to convince firms what's in it for them. So what's the takeaway for firms that they should do it, that they have a bigger talent pool, that they might oversee certain people if they are discriminating others.
Yeah, I agree that this is content-wise something that would fit into such a training. But the nice thing about your vignette experiments is that there is some randomization in the design.
Yes.
So in order to have a causally evaluated training, you also need some randomization. Because if you would just try to convince firms so that they take part in your training, then this is not a random group. Some firms are able, you can incentivize them, and others not. And those are not similar type of people or similar firms.
Definitely. However, I think you cannot push firms towards it. So
True.
I think it's still voluntarily.
True. But you could also try among those who are willing, you could randomly draw a group that can get the training and the other one not, for example.
That's definitely the case. If you do it with a vignette study, yes, definitely.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Let me take you on a flight to Belfast, where we give the floor to Dr. Christian Rupietta, who's senior lecturer at Queen's Business School in Belfast. Christian, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Let me first congratulate you, Luisa, on this great dissertation. I truly enjoyed reading the work, and congratulate you on 3 well-crafted empirical studies. My question now is related to your second chapter, so your first study. And I'm particularly interested in the measurement of the dependent variable, which is recruitment probability, and where you use an 11-point scale to create a binary variable. So my question here is on the interpretation of the different categories, the 2 categories in this binary variable that emerges from the 11 categories. The dissertation mentions that the category of 0 has been formed out of the categories 1 and 3, 1 to 3, which is very unlikely to make a recruitment decision, or very unlikely to recruit an applicant, and while 1 is actually ranging from 4 to 11, which also includes a part of the unlikely scale, but then moves into the very likely probability of recruiting someone. So my question here is, what is the qualitative interpretation of the 2 categories that are then formed? Because they're actually containing both being unlikely and being unlikely and likely. And what kind of alternatives were available methodologically to form different categorizations as dependent variable? I know that you have done robustness checks, but what other alternatives than median splits would have been available? I would like to have your thoughts on this.
Highly esteemed opponent, thank you for your comments and your questions. I hope that I got your question right, that the first one is on the recruitment probability and on the formation to the binary variable instead of the ordinal variable. So the sample is not normally distributed. So that makes it already hard to analyze that. And by hindsight, that is obvious that if you give someone a low-skilled applicant, then the first intent to recruit is better not. So that's also why we have such a big group of recruiters between 1 and 3. And I decided to adjust it to a binary variable to analyze it with a linear probability model, which makes it then, at least for me, the first easier to interpret that. However, by hindsight, I also thought maybe a discrete choice experiment would have been better to force the decision to either profile A or B. However, the sample was as it is. So I took the median, and that's also why it was divided as it is now. And then, analyze the samples as that. However, with the robustness check, you also see that when you keep the ordinal variable and then analyze it with an O-logit model, for example, then the significance of the interactions also go away, so it's quite sensitive. So first of all, now I would do definitely a discrete choice experiment instead of a factorial survey experiment. And the other question was on the attributable levels, if I remember correctly. Could you rephrase your question again, please?
Yeah. So the sub question was related to which alternatives would have been available, either for the measurement of the outcome or for creating something else than a median split.
I'm not sure if I understand that correctly.
Yeah, because my question is related to the categories 4 and 5. Categories 4 and 5 still means that the company is unlikely to make a recruitment decision or to recruit someone. And putting this basically together with the higher levels of the scale. So basically putting this together with category 11 puts basically unlikely to recruit and likely to recruit in one category. That's why, of course, I see the argument that this is highly skewed and that you need to make an adjustment. But could you, for example, think about other ways, for example, to measure the outcome variable, or to probably think about alternatives to split the outcome variable than those that you have done, and other ways to measure the outcome variable in your study?
Well, so if we put aside the option to do a discrete choice experiment, I mean, I did the robustness check on the whole range to see also the heterogeneity and to do it with an logic model, but that was difficult. And I also tried to change the how the binary variable is splitted. So I also tried to do the split at 2 or 4 and not at 3, so not at the median. However, then also the significances for the interaction, not for the financial support, but for the interactions were sensitive. So that was also not a possibility. So yeah, that would have been my ideas, which I tested, and the results are very sensitive.
Thank you very much for your reflection on this.
Yes.
Interesting and difficult issue, and if, of course, I shouldn't mingle as pro-rector. I'm fully aware of that, but it triggers thoughts on indeed design of study and sensitivity towards results. So it's a tricky but very interesting issue. But I get the message that you've done well, so absolutely great. We continue in the air, but move to Berlin. The institute is at Bonn, but Dr. Paula Protsch is at Berlin. She's also a member of the assessment committee. Paula, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone, and good morning, Luisa, dear candidate. I'm really honored to be part of this assessment committee, and that I had the chance to really read your dissertation in detail, and I really enjoyed reading it. I think particularly, I was impressed by the comprehensive perspective on recruitment choices. So you look at 3 levels, and you generate new insights into 3 levels of mechanisms: the individual level, so the recruiter's characteristics; the meso level, the firm characteristics and strategies; and also the macro level, like governmental policies and so on. My question concerns the second chapter, or your first paper. It's about the scope of research, or like the group of applicants you are covering. So you say they are low skilled, but what is your conception of being low skilled? The background to this question is that in the German apprenticeship market, employed like the intermediate school living school leavers with intermediate secondary school living certificates are still the main target group. So I'm not sure whether that's would be entirely correct to call these applicants low skilled, but of course we might still do so. But then the question is, wouldn't you think that putting hypothesis 2 to a more direct test would be to test an interaction between the skill level of the applicants, like the school living certificate or the grades, and the risk profiles of the recruiters? This would be my question. So if you don't think this kind of interaction would be actually a good idea to test hypothesis 2.
As a highly esteemed opponent, thank you very much for your comments and your question. If I understand you correctly, it's on, first of all, the low skills. And I mean, in this study, low skill is cognitive and non-cognitive. So you have the school grades, for example. in general the school level, but also, and which is, I think, also becoming even more important, the soft skills, like communication skills, interest in the education, and so on. Sorry, could you repeat the question again? The first one on that.
Of course. The first one is more generally, so is it correct to call all these applicants as low skilled if they're like, many of them are still the main target group for employers? And would they then be to be incentivized to hire them if it's actually like their main target group? And the second one is if it's about the question of whether they are more willing or if it's kind of interacting with the risk profile, if they would hire the low skilled, wouldn't you rather test an interaction between like the level of skills of the applicant, like their school level or their grades, or also their cognitive skills, and the risk profiles of the recruiters? So these are two questions, actually.
So the first one, they are low skilled, and because this is a group of people who already tried to apply for an apprenticeship position and failed. So they are definitely all low skilled. And then in this experiment it's a try to provide then an apprenticeship position with ALMPs because they tried on their own and they failed or didn't succeed. So to see whether it is possible to get them into an apprenticeship position with ALMPs, and with financial support, that is the recruitment probability is increased, but with training support not. So does that answer your first question?
Yes.
Yes, and the second one on the sorry, could you repeat the last one?
On the interaction between school level and recruiters' risk profiles.
Yeah, I also tried that. There was nothing significant to find, actually. But that would have been interesting in general because the risk tolerance of recruiters, according to related studies, is important for general training. So if companies already have their skilled workers, for example, and want to invest in training, the risk preference is definitely important. However, in this case, with apprenticeship applicants who are still unproven and have no record they can relate to and are complete strangers to them, that is not such a big case, at least in my studies, but I still think it might also be the sample of the data set, so it is definitely something to look further into in future research. Because just thinking about it, there should be something. I mean, risk-tolerant recruiters should be more the ones compared to risk-averse recruiters who also try to train someone. So I was also surprised by that result, actually. But yeah, there might also be a difference between apprenticeship training and continuous training, for example. Also, especially because apprenticeship training is for 3 years, so it's a quite long period compared to continuous training, which could also be just a few weeks. So the commitment is bigger or higher. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you very much. I also would expect still that there should be some kind of interaction, as the level of schooling, also the school grades are so important selection criteria for employers, but maybe it's different kind of personality of the recruiters which plays a role here, and not the risk aversion. That could also be an issue. Thank you very much.
My apologies for not mentioning that Dr. Paula Protsch is Professor in Sociology, Empirical Methods in Vocational Education and Training Institute at the University of Cologne, and at BIP University at Cologne. She's working at the Department of Sociology and Social Psychology. That's for the record. We continue the opposition by giving the floor to the secretary today of this committee, no member of the assessment committee, Professor Dr. Rolf van der Velden. Roa.
And did you mention my affiliate?
Professor Emeritus in Sociology.
Thank you, Pro-Rector. Dear candidate, dear Luisa, I want to join the others in complimenting you with this thesis. It's well written, you know, it's very straightforward, no difficult language, so right to the point. 2 chapters already published, very good, very good. You don't see that often, I mean, but that's a good job. So, and probably that's the reason why I also have a question on chapter 2, because that's the only one that has not been published yet. And I know there is a lot of questions on chapter 2. But what I want to do is ask you to reflect a little bit on maybe how you could improve that chapter. And I want to give you a couple of suggestions, or actually one suggestion. So one of the intriguing parts, so I think in general you did a good job for looking at risk preference. So that risk is an issue in recruiting someone. And when you look at the findings, you see some puzzling findings. So that for example, in figure 2.3, actually the risk-averse recruiters are more likely to recruit a low-skilled applicant if no support is offered. So my colleague, my esteemed colleague, Andries de Grip already mentioned that, so maybe there's something with this risk preference of recruiters. And I tend to agree that maybe risk preference of recruiters is not the most essential thing here. But risk is. And maybe the risk is more related to what I would call the damage potential of underperformance. And I want to give you a real-life example. I have a 4-year-old granddaughter, Sarah, and she's best friend with her neighbor girl, also 4 years old. And a couple of weeks ago, they engaged in an experiment. Not a vignette, but an experiment anyway, cutting each other's hair. The neighbor's girl actually got off bad. She lost all her curls. My granddaughter was saved a little bit, but anyway. They also engaged a couple of weeks earlier in another experiment. They found the vitamin pills, which really looked like candies. They were pink. My granddaughter really loves pink, right? So, and they ate the whole bottle. Now, of course, in the first experiment, the parents were they were not really amused, but there's no damage done, right? So you get a bad haircut, so what? And the second case, they immediately called the hospital, etc. Right? So what should we do? This holds for real life as well, right? So if I'm a recruiter in the hair dressing business, okay, if I get a haircut by an underskilled hairdresser, it's a nuisance, but it's no harm done, right? If I go to the hospital and I get looked after by an underskilled nurse, you don't want to do that, right? So, regardless of the risk preference of the recruiters in the hair business sector or in the healthcare sector, they will look at potential damage. And so, what I saw in your paper is you control for firm characteristics, which usually is a good thing to do, right? But in this case, maybe the most interesting thing was actually, overlooked, because maybe the most essential differences are between firms and across sectors. So I would like you to reflect on that and say, okay, maybe could you think of measuring damage potential across sectors or something like that, and improve your design. So how would you go about doing that?
Yeah. Highly esteemed opponent, thank you very much for your comments and questions. And I agree that this study is definitely not done yet. It can still be worked on. And I also agree that it definitely depends on industry and occupations. And I think the good thing about factorial survey experiments is that you can do triple interactions, which is definitely tough to analyze, as you can see in my fourth paper. But there you could definitely also interact with industries or occupations, for example, and then potentially categorize into the degree of, not sure if you can call it damage done, but something how it affects maybe others. For example, that in a hospital or in caregiving industries, it would definitely affect another person. Or in when you're a pilot, it also definitely affects other persons. It could definitely be an idea to categorize it somehow like that and then interact it and see how that then comes up with a risk tolerance. And I would also definitely, I would like to also do a similar experiment, but with a discrete choice experiment, so that just to see how that turns out then. Then of course the triple interaction would not be possible again. But in this case, definitely something about occupation, which is also in the VET statistic given. You have all kind of information on occupations and industries there. That would be definitely an idea.
Maybe you don't even need to go into these, say, triple interactions. I personally hate that, because it's terribly complicated to interpret, and but I would suggest something much more simple and straightforward. Is like at the BIP or at the IAB, you must have information on something like damage potential in sectors and firms, etc. And then you could just do a simple interaction. So instead of the risk tolerance interaction that you have with, or risk preference interaction that you just have an interaction with the damage potential of an industry. So, and that is regardless of the risk preference of the recruiter.
Mm. Yes.
And you should be able to gather that information, I guess.
Yes, I assume so, yes. So staying with a double interaction and interacting with the damage of an industry or an occupation, and then to see how ALMPs can trigger recruiters in these specific fields. And then also to see which kind of AMPs maybe works for which industry or which occupation.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes.
I don't want to stop you, because I'm getting into the discussion. I also think it's about really risk and risk preference, but given or dependent on how risks as such are in the organization, health, or are managed or controlled. So it does depend on the control system.
Yes.
So if you've got tight control systems, you might even allow people to be more risk tolerant as complementary. So there's something in between. The thing is that there's something in between risk preferences, and recruitment, because it's always given the control, and it could be industry driven. So there's definitely something to look out for.
Yeah.
But I shouldn't mingle, Mrs. Minssen. But that's congratulations to you, because you really excite me and excite the interest. So that's in itself very well done. We go back to the Professor Dr. Andries de Grip.
Yeah, no longer about risks, but more general. I was very interested in your thesis that you apply both factorial survey experiments and discrete choice experiments. Both are valid methods in the literature. I also did both, also with your co-supervisors, though maybe you also discuss these kind of things with them. But I wonder, what do you think are the advantages and disadvantages of the two methods? And would you have a real preference, or is this dependent on the topic? So please elaborate on this.
Highly esteemed opponent, thank you very much for your comment and your question. If I would have to choose, I think I would go for a discrete choice experiment, simply because I think you have this forced decision between profile A and B, and especially, for example, in the case of low skilled, you then have to make a decision. So that, I think, might bring very interesting results. However, for example, in the fourth chapter, the factorial survey experiment works really well. And of course, I'm also not a big fan of triple interactions, but in that case, it was very beneficial, and it brought very interesting ideas or results. So I think it depends definitely on the topic and what you want to research in that field. If you have a very subgroup, for example, like in chapter 2, and people are rather tended to either definitely recruit someone or definitely not recruit someone, then maybe a forced decision is a better choice. But in general, I think it depends on the topic you are investigating.
And a factorial survey experiment, could it have other advantages, more in terms of easier to include it in a survey, or other considerations?
I mean, easier to put it in a survey might be the case. I mean, as an interviewee, you then have the choice to decide between 0 and 10 or 1 and 11. So it might maybe that people keep on track because it's easier to decide. And when you have profile A and B, you first have to read both profiles and then make a decision. So that might also then, that you might lose some people over the rounds, that people get more fatigue.
Yeah. Okay, we share our opinion on the values of both. Yeah. Thank you so much. Yeah.
Anne-Marie?
Thank you. I have one question again, sorry about that, regarding chapter 2 and about the way that you measure the skills preference of the recruiter. You also there make a 0-1 variable regarding the median of the risk tolerance. I was wondering the reason for why you did so, and whether that could maybe explain the non-significant results in the baseline model.
Esteemed opponent, thank you very much for your question. I decided to do so simply for interpretation-wise. It's definitely an easier interpretation to analyze also in an interaction a binary variable. I did a robustness check on the whole range of the variable because the variable is an ordinal one. It's not a binary one. However, that does not change the results, so that is still the same.
You can finish your answer.
So, yeah, but that was basically it. But yeah, this results stay significant as they are. Thank you.
Thank you very much, dear members of the opposition. Frau Luisa Minssen, the time appointed for defending your thesis has passed. Hope you enjoyed it. The degree committee will now withdraw to discuss the quality of your thesis and your defense, which we will certainly enjoy doing. I request that you and your company await the result of our deliberations here and await, please, our return to this room. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
The PhD defense has now ended. The degree committee will debate the candidate's performance behind closed doors. This process usually takes about 10 minutes.
Southside, 10 miles in my rearview mirror. I know what it felt like. My goals only getting clearer. East side to the west side. No place like home. If it's questions that you've got, go the extra mile and die. All your time, 'cause I'll go the extra mile. Long road to the south side, 10 miles in my rearview mirror. I know what it felt like. My goals only getting clearer. East side to the west side. No place like home. If it's questions that you've got, go the extra mile and die. On the dash, got my laces tied. Long road, I don't waste no time. Break rules because fate decides. With the team and we chase the light. I make a move, fall down, shake it off. I hate to lose, bad branch, break it off. No room for negativity, praise and love. Prepare for deep part cause we're taking off. Get the mileage, traveling so far from home. Gathering knowledge, other connections. I put the time in to get everything I ever hoped for. It's a challenge and we all in. It's a better future that we go for. Even though these nights seem long, I know that I am never on my own. Know you've won the battle once you've grown. Southside, 10 miles in my rearview mirror. I know what it felt like. My goals only getting clearer. East side to the west side. No place like home. If it's questions that you've got, go the extra mile and die. Long road to the south side, 10 miles in my rearview mirror. I know what it felt like. My goals only getting clearer. East side to the west side. No place like home. If it's questions that you've got, go the extra mile and die. Years can't fly by now, don't waste all your time. 'Cause I'll go the extra mile.
Frau Luisa Minssen, the degree committee here present has assessed the quality of your thesis and your defense. In view of its positive verdict, Frau Dr. Luisa Minssen, and taking into account your previous qualifications, the degree committee has decided to grant you the degree of doctor. Congratulations. Professor Levels, your promoter, is authorized to confer upon you this academic distinction in accordance with Dutch university custom, and Harald will, Professor Pfeiffer will speak at the laudatio after that. I invite your supervisor now to take the floor.
Please all rise.
You're first going to have to take an oath, right?
Can you see if there's a microphone there?
Yes.
Please use it.
Is this okay? Yeah, thank you. Luisa, do you promise to work in accordance with the principles of scientific integrity at all times, to be careful and honest, transparent, independent, and responsible?
I promise.
By the authority vested in us by law and in conformity with the decision of the committee here present, I hereby confer upon you, Luisa Sophie Caroline Minssen, the degree of doctor and grant you all rights attached by custom and law. As evidence of this, I now present you with the degree certificate signed by the rector, the secretary, and other members of the committee, and affixed with the official seal of the university. But first, I congratulate you. Nice big book. Dr. Minssen.
Please be seated.
Yes. Dear Luisa, it's done. It's done. First of all, congratulations for the great achievement of successfully defending your PhD thesis here in this wonderful building with many wonderful colleagues and friends and family members. And I remember myself having to defend a thesis that was exactly 12 years ago in this room. And I remember how nervous I was. So I can imagine you were nervous too, so my deepest respect for this defense. Well done. I have the honor to address a few words to you, also in the name of your supervisor, Mark Levels, and Caroline Wehner, the co-supervisor, together with myself. When we first met, that was in the end of 2019, and you were there for the job interview at BIP. And that was a few months before the first Corona lockdown in Germany and in BIP. And your first working day in Bonn was then the 1st of April 2020, which was then, although it was not an April prank, your first working day was online with meeting with me, and that wasn't an ideal start for a PhD project. And even more so, you came from a very different job back then. Your work involved a leadership position at a global online delivery portal. We don't say the name because we don't want to advertise here. On top, the area of research you were embarking on was fairly new to you, and both in terms of contents and in terms of quantitative methods. So coming back from a successful private sector career to pursue an academic degree is, unusual. So overall, one could have thought that the whole undertaking of starting a PhD position was a bit ill-fated in the beginning. But whoever believed you would complain or become frustrated in the beginning or during the PhD did not count on the amazing will to achieve your aim, which you reached with today's successful defense. From our perspective, one key for today's success was a good fit between two things. First, the ideas your supervisors had, especially Mark, on regular reporting and successive meetings, but even more so, your personality of persistent eagerness to learn new things and a high degree of conscientiousness that you showed over the whole period of the PhD. The way you were digging into data and methods that were previously unknown to you was most impressive. And I may say, and Judith Offerhaus is here today, she's the head of the PhD department at BIP. You were and you still are a role model for many other PhD students at BIP and at ROA. What impressed us the most was the way you dealt with referee comments and decisions on the 2 papers that you managed to publish before the end of the PhD. It's never easy for young researchers to deal with rejections and with the harsh critique from not nice referees. But the way you approached the revisions in a rational and structured way was more mature than many of my more experienced researchers I know. Now, myself and several other colleagues in this room had the honor to work closely together with you for several years, and over time you get to know people. And I rarely have met a person so friendly, open, and good-humored, even in stressful times. However, I remember also that there have been difficult private times for you, and when you came to me and you said you needed some time off, I said, of course, and I agreed. But I thought you needed some time in peace, in quiet, to work things out. But not Luisa. Instead, you went to hike the way of St. James in Spain for weeks and many, many miles, and this with new shoes causing you a lot of blisters. So you fought yourself through this crisis and coming out stronger than before. This strength to tackle problems that cross your way is admirable. And this and your always positive and constructive attitude and your cheerfulness is something very valuable and something that your colleagues at BIP and ROA will dearly miss. So let me now come to an end, wishing you also, in the name of Mark and Caroline, the best for your future, which no doubt will be bright and successful. So, Dr. Luisa Minssen, you can be proud of yourself. We definitely are. And I'm sure your family and friends are as well. So now we're looking forward to a wonderful celebration and have a great party. Enjoy.
Thank you very much. Vielen Dank, Herr Professor Pfeiffer, for the laudatio. Congratulations, of course, to the promoter and to the co-promotores. Congratulations, of course, to the family members and all of those in support of this achievement. And on behalf of the Maastricht University community and the academic community at large, congratulations on this achievement. Referring to your proposition 10, PhD applying to a job position should consider more than their formal qualifications. The formal qualifications, we've handled that. But you say yourself there is more, and probably it depends on institutional settings, firm or individual factors, one of which, the quality of the snacks we're about to enjoy in a couple of minutes, will undoubtedly play a role. Warmest congratulations to you, Frau Dr. Luisa Minssen, and I hereby close this session. Here we have Paula and Christian on screen.
Yes.
Yes. Thank you for